Welcome, everybody. This is Vicki Ronchetti with Show Dog Prep School. I'm so glad everybody's here. I'm pretty sure that this is one of the highest attended webinars, and I'm so excited about that because I guess I thought I was the only one who was interested in body awareness for show dogs and body awareness for dogs in general. We're going to do a PowerPoint presentation. You guys are welcome to ask questions. You can type your questions in the chat, although I do not have a moderator today, so it might be best if you do the little raise hand one or even unmute yourself and ask the question. And because I want to make sure that I do answer everything. So for years, I had a local dog training business that did all sorts of training, puppy through advanced obedience and competition classes and and all that, we did everything. And for years, I taught a class called Strength, Balance, and Body Awareness. And it was a very, very popular class. And for show dogs, what I found was that a lot of dogs, they had most of the skills for the show ring, but there could be little pieces that were missing because the dog didn't have good body awareness, meaning that I'm just going to go through, and if you have your speaker on and not muted and you have any background noise, please go ahead and mute yourself. Just in case you guys don't know, if you take your arrow down to the bottom of your screen here, you can actually hit the mute button and then your sound will go away. So I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. So I just want to see if everybody could go ahead and mute if you're having any background noise. Because I'm not sure where this is coming from. I'm just going in and muting everybody. Since I'm not, okay, perfect. So I found that a lot of dogs who weren't very good at self-stacking themselves or weren't very good at, knowing how to pull themselves up over their front, or weren't very good or lacked skill in some of these things that required them to be very aware of their body parts, we could teach them just a few exercises and it really helped to improve their performance. So we're going to talk about a lot of that today. And I'm going to get started with this PowerPoint as usual with all of the webinars. After the presentation, I will upload this to YouTube, and then you'll be sent a link which will be available for 60 days for you to rewatch the webinar. So know that you'll be able to watch it back if you want to see it again, or you missed anything or anything like that. So you will have access to that again. And if you're not already, please follow us on Facebook and YouTube. A lot of all of our events now are listed on our Facebook page and under our events. And now you can actually register right on Facebook, which makes it a little bit easier. All right, so I'm going to get right into this PowerPoint. And we're going to start talking about body awareness. So body awareness really is everywhere with dogs. When you look at a dog doing a trick like this, you might not think about body awareness, but obviously he has to be very aware of how he's holding his head in order to balance that ball up there. And it's everywhere. These are all really good sort of body awareness pictures. So stacking boxes are a great body awareness tool for show dogs. We use a lot of fitness equipment in body awareness work because it just can be helpful, especially when you want the dog to learn to place, parts of his body certain places, or you're doing conditioning work. We use a lot of fitness equipment like peanuts, like this little bone. So even this my little Chihuahua Pinto up here balancing on this piece of driftwood, I mean, that's a body awareness. That takes work for him to figure out how to do that. I had to share this because this is a picture of one of my friends, Basenji's. And I mean, look at this body awareness. I mean, this dog is balancing on a folded up X pen and about to go over there. And I mean, this takes a great deal of skill and finesse to be able to do it like that. That is excellent body awareness. So what is body awareness? So proprioception is perception or awareness of the position and movement of the body. And that's what body awareness is. It's basically the dog being aware of parts of their body. That could mean their tail. That could mean their actual torso and body. That can mean their legs or their feet or their ears or their head. This little Ansie sitting on top of this little platform, that's body awareness. She has to, while she's very tiny, that is also a very tiny little platform. So to get her whole body up on there, it takes a little bit of skill on her part. Good body awareness can increase confidence. It also allows a show dog's movements to be deliberate, meaning that I don't really want people. Now, listen, we use food a lot to lure or guide dogs into position, right? But I think that people spend a lot of time making dogs have to guess, because if the dog doesn't have really good body awareness and he doesn't know when she does that, she means move my back left leg, then it makes it harder for the dog. And when you're trying to get him to reposition in the ring, he's guessing. He's just trying to figure out. She's saying, fix it, but fix what? I have all these body parts. So really good body awareness will help the dog understand what you want him to do with specific body parts. And they'll be deliberate and on purpose with intention. And he'll know that he's doing those for the reason that you asked him to move that foot, and he knows how to do it. You're not just fooling around trying to get it. So for show dogs, really common things are front end, rear end, each foot, the entire body, nose targeting. So what they're doing with their nose, because that's going to direct what a lot of their body's doing, whatever is happening with their head, and weight shifting. We don't think about always a weight shift as body awareness, but it absolutely is, because we all know how a dog slumped back or posting can ruin the whole silhouette and outline of the dog, right? Like, it's important that they know how to push themselves up over their front so that when you stack them, they don't look all sunk back. They look like, you know, regal and forward and up and confident. So we do use a lot of equipment. This is just a pile of fitness equipment before I taught one of my balance and body awareness classes. So the little round discs, those are just placement. Those are just visual targets. Yes, they have a little bit of feeling, and so it might give the dog some, you know, textile information, but a lot of it is just the fact that it's this different colored thing there. I like bones a lot. When I stopped teaching all of these classes, I sold most of my equipment. I didn't sell the bones. I love those little bones, like the green one you see laying there. The discs, that little blue disc, you can actually get human Pilates balance discs. So I think that this equipment can be really helpful. Even this black, you know, bowl turned upside down, that can be a platform for a little dog. That could be a front end pivoting perch for a dog. That can be something for their rear end. A little tiny one could be something for just one foot to target. So you can be pretty creative in your equipment. You don't have to have fancy equipment to do this stuff. Frequently people don't. We do a lot of this with just stuff around the house. So body awareness exercises can be done even with small puppies. So with little puppies, especially under 6 months old, I don't do any strength training. So they can do a little bit of balance work, which is a little bit of strength training. So I would be really careful about what I'm doing. But the body awareness stuff, we can start with very little puppies. And I want to tell you guys that I just had a litter of puppies go home. The last 2 puppies went home last week, and I did Suzanne Clothier's Enriched Puppy Protocol with this litter. And generally, I always do a lot of stuff with my litters, but with this litter, I did Suzanne's program with Suzanne actually coaching me. And this is actually a program that's available for anybody to sign up for and buy and do with her. And from very, very little age, where I normally would not have too much in their area from like 1 to 2 or 3 weeks, I had stuff in there immediately. So within the first week, those puppies were already having to climb over stuff, meaning that in the whelping box, there was just all sorts of obstacles in there all the time, just different things. I mean, I would just go to the dollar store and there was pans and toys and just anything you could imagine, I would just throw in there. Those puppies, those baby puppies who are now all in their own homes are amazing and extremely skilled and very, very agile and able to do things that my litters in the past haven't. That's body awareness. They're learning how to move over this stuff, how to climb over this stuff, even as tiny puppies. You know, the climb platforms that are about probably that high. One of the puppies, the owner sent a picture saying I was going to start training her to get on top of this, and she was about to take the legs off and the puppy just jumped on it. I mean, these puppies can do things because even as tiny babies, I was teaching them about body awareness stuff. Props can be really helpful again in the body awareness and in some cases doing the exercises.
No.
And some props can be faded out, but other ones you may use long term. In other words, you might use a stacking box like Sly Cly, this little cattle dog, is on while you're training for body awareness and muscle memory work, but you may end up not needing that eventually and just getting rid of it. But a lot of this stuff I keep long term. The thing is, a lot of these exercises also are just, they burn energy. So if it's a rainy day, if you're not going to be able to get your dog out for a walk and you just have a small space, you can burn a lot of energy with this, because sometimes it takes a lot of thought for the dog to figure out what it is you want and what you're working on. And also, you know, that type of, especially if you're doing balance work, that's very tiring for the dog. If anybody has their microphone on and you've got background noise, if you could kill your mic, that would be great. And let me know if you need help doing that. It's also, body awareness work is very complementary to a fitness program that includes strength training and balance work. So again, my class that I taught was called Strength, Balance, and Body Awareness. We did all these things. And I want to say, like, I do a lot of webinars. I teach all over the country. I do a lot of remote coaching with people all over the place. And I think that, you know, I sort of took for granted, I'm going to do a body awareness webinar. But when I started building it, it was one of the most challenging webinars I built, because there's just so much. There's so many things that we don't think about that are actually body awareness things. So some issues that can happen with poor body awareness are dogs unable to reposition their rear leg on their own. So I actually had a lady come to me one time with a dog. She was already a champion. She had been finished by a professional handler, who was not a handler that was particularly big on the dog trying to figure things out and make choices and be able to do it on her own. Meaning, if I want the dog to learn how to do something, I'm going to train it so the dog owns that behavior and can do it when asked. But this dog went with the handler where she literally was not allowed to move. The handler put her physically into position. So when the owner then wanted to take over and go for a grand and maybe some owner handler stuff, when we started working on trying to teach the dog to back up, this dog did not back up. She had no confidence or sort of knowledge of, like, you can actually put your leg back there. So as soon as I taught her to back up and then to back up with her rear end onto something, so back up a little step or platform, we started being able to ask her to reposition her rear legs, but she didn't have that skill. So, you know, it's the rear end awareness is really a big thing, a really important thing. And I put this photo of this Great Dane Bright in because when he was a puppy, a big puppy, but a baby dog still, he came to my strength, balance, and body awareness class. And you could immediately see that he already had a lot of body awareness from the work they'd been doing with him. So when I put out a ladder, and you'll see some of the ladder work I do for body awareness later, this giant puppy could very, very carefully and thoughtfully walk through a ladder with all sorts of obstacles on it, and be able to do that with his feet without smashing into everything. That's the sign that this dog has already practiced placing his feet in very specific places and had the ability to do that. So it can also help with a dog who doesn't understand how to, again, weight shift over his front, or dogs that cannot be easily lured backwards or forwards, meaning if you're trying to teach the dog to step forward in the ring to perfect their stack or back up, they might not be very good at doing this if they don't have great body awareness. It's not uncommon for dogs to, especially young big dogs, where it looks like their rear end's just sort of along for the ride. Um, Sometimes I think that that's how it is. Like they really have not learned how to navigate that part of their body. So a dog who doesn't have good body awareness might run into obstacles rather than stepping over them and being aware of them. And it can cause movement issues such as pacing and crabbing. So it's really a pretty important thing. So the first piece, and I'm seeing more and more people are training this behavior, and I'm happy about that, because I think that this is the first body awareness exercise that I teach. It is very simple. It's not hard to train, and it can be really beneficial for a lot of things. And it's a nose target. And basically that means if you hold out your hand and say touch, the dog takes his nose and touches your hand. So it's more of a helpful ring behavior than an exercise, meaning that I would teach it so the dog can do it, but it's not, it's not an exercise that's going to take a lot of time and you're going to be working on like you might be some other things. But I think it's a great skill for all dogs to have. Frequently, when I would go do private lessons and that kind of thing, and people would have a dog where they had already damaged a recall, meaning they would call the dog and the dog had learned to run the other way, I would just switch to a hand target and that would become their recall. I also always teach this to puppy dogs because I want owners to be able to move puppies and dogs around without having to manhandle them. So in other words, if you have a dog who is laying on the couch, I want to be able to say touch, and he jumps off the couch and comes and touches so I can move him around. Also, if you're in the ring and you want to stack your dog, if you can get him to touch, he can walk up in front of you, touch, and sort of self-stack in front of you. It's just a helpful way to move the dog around. Also, dogs they sort of seem to like doing this. It's an easy little trick, fun, simple thing that they get a cookie for. So it can also be helpful to get the dog's attention back when he gets distracted in the ring or on a walk. It also can be taught as a duration behavior for other purposes, meaning the nose target is this, but you could also teach it where the dog does that and just it sticks on there, right? He doesn't take his nose off the target. And if anybody does nose work, you'll know that that's a behavior we like, right? Where he just goes on the odor and can just stay there. But there's a lot of different things you could use it for. And if you're using it for other purposes, like I use it a lot for when I was doing freestyle, then I would put it on a target stick, meaning I have a plexiglass stick about like that with a little ball in the end, and I could have the dog nose target that. Now, the way that I train it is by using a marker. So a marker is either a word that tells the dog when you got it right, a cookie's coming, or you can use a clicker that also, does the same thing. I'll show you a video of that. And when I say shaping it, what I mean is you're training a little bit at a time. You're just starting with this tiny slice of the behavior, the very first piece. You train that, you reward that, and then you go to the next piece. So I would start out by just putting out my hand, and if the dog looks at it, I would click and feed. Take the hand away, do that again, looks at it, clicks and feed. If he's like looking at it every time. Then I'm going to put my hand out, and when he looks at it, I'll wait and see if he moves towards it, click and feed. And then we just build it that way. So let's see if this video is going to play. Oh, I want to make sure that you guys get the sound. So I'm going to go out and then back into, make sure the sound comes. Okay. There we go.
Target just means that if you hold your hand out and say touch, the dog takes his nose and touches your hand. It's a really great way to get the dog refocused in the ring. It's also a good way to move a dog around, like off of the furniture or onto another space. So I'm going to shape this behavior. That means anything that ZZ does in interacting with my hand, I'm going to reinforce. So I'm going to start by just putting out my hand, and if she even looks at it, I'm going to click and treat that. As she moves towards it, I click that. So I can tell really quickly I'm going to be able to get the hand target. As soon as I can get the behavior, I can add a cue, but I'm not going to add a verbal cue until I'm sure I can get the behavior. But I'm getting it consistently, so now I'm going to give the cue. Touch. So notice how I add the cue, pause, and then present my hand. Touch. And the click happens right as her nose hits my hand. Touch. Once she gets it, I can try and do things like add some duration or some distance. Zaina, touch. And also touch. Moving towards
it. Okay. So that is a really quick, easy behavior to train. And I recommend that you do. Train that nose touch. It has so many, beneficial uses that, and it's just so easy to train, and it can just really get your dog refocused again. So I love that behavior. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is pause up. So this is obviously body awareness to help dogs have front end awareness, meaning the whole front end, the front legs, the front feet. It can be done on a variety of surfaces. So you can do it on an upside down bowl, like I showed you in that one picture. You could do it on a small stool or fitness equipment, such as a peanut, a bone, or a disc. So here's Valencia doing it on a peanut in a conditioning class. So this, it's body awareness, but this is also a balance and strength exercise, right? That we might have the dog be going down and up doing push-ups or weight shift or some sort of other strength exercises, but still she needs to have the body awareness to be able to put her feet on there. It's hugely confidence building too, because some dogs are afraid of interacting with stuff. And when we get them interacting with stuff and having a good time doing it, then they become more comfortable with new things and interacting with new things. It will increase the dog's ability to be easily lured in the front, meaning that if they know how to move their feet easily and they know when you're trying to lure them to move their feet, it'll make this easier for you in the show ring. And then you can add other exercises, equipment for an added challenge. So again, push-ups or backing off of it and back on, off of it and back on, that kind of thing. Or the level, the height of, what they're working on. Or if this dog actually could be on a step or another piece of equipment with her front paws on that. So you can see how it can really turn into a nice piece of your conditioning routine for your show dog. The other thing is, this is a novice trick dog trick. So if you're interested in getting a trick dog title on your dog, literally paws up is a trick, and you can use food to lure, and you can give them a cookie after they do it. So it's great for that benefit too. It's just, it's just an easy thing that they can do, but they're still learning a skill. And it's great for taking photos of your dog. So you could see with Antsy and with, my dogs do a lot of pictures pose with their paws up on stuff. It helps with that. So this one, I don't even think I have a video of how to train it. You're literally just going to have a cookie and put it at the dog's nose and encourage the dog to step up. And if your dog doesn't want to, like if you were going to use this peanut, now, honestly, I was blown away at how not concerned dogs were about the fitness equipment. Even dogs who were fairly sensitive were interested in interacting with it pretty quickly, probably because of the way we set up the class and the way that we used food. And so we built confidence and you know, them being comfortable around the equipment pretty fast. But if your dog was worried about what you were using, just use something else. You could use a little stool. You could use an ottoman. You could use, you know, a lot of different things, a box, you know, a platform, something like that. So you're literally just using food, pulling the dog up, giving the cookie, have the dog get off. Or a lot of times I throw the food behind the dog to like go reset. Then they can come back, lure them back up, get a cookie. It's a great, great exercise for them understanding about their front feet. Okay, the next one, and you know, when I'm training a show dog how to free stack, the behaviors I teach are stand there. So offer standing to me instead of sitting or doing some other behavior. Stepping forward, meaning if your feet are like this and I say step, I want you to bring your foot together to match those, right? And back. And that means if your back feet are back and or are, you know, not even together and I say back, that means to move your foot back and get it in alignment with the other back foot. So all of these things require body awareness. And I think that in general, dogs tend to have better front end awareness than they do rear end awareness naturally. And then you'll find dogs who are very pawsy or just tend to use their feet a lot. So I had a dog that he didn't think about using his paws. So if you were going to teach him a paw trick, it took a lot of work. It took a lot more work than a dog who naturally just sort of uses their paws. So you'll have dogs that are like that, even with the rear. But I think in general, they're much more aware of their front end naturally. So it helps the dog learn to better navigate and reposition his rear feet if he knows how to back up. And you'll be able to better have the dog reposition himself in the ring by backing up into position if you've worked on this and he really knows how to do it. And again, knows how to do it is different than you just have to sort of try and get things to happen in the ring with food because you're in there and the judge is looking at you. Like, I really want you to be able to just ask your dog to do it and prompt him a little bit. It's okay to prompt him a little bit, but you don't want him just guessing like what you want. And it makes it much easier to train the dog to move a single rear foot back, meaning if it's just, you know, he always stops like this and you just need his foot to get back, we want to be clear about that, right? We don't want him to just, again, be guessing. So the way that I train this is I'm going to use a food lure, excuse me, and it's going to be basically put directly in the dog, at the dog's mouth, not inside his mouth, at his mouth and nose. And then I'm gently going to move my hand towards the dog. And the moment that he moves a foot back, I'm going to click and treat that. Now, with some dogs, you won't maybe get a foot move at first. You just might get him leaning back, and I would click that first. I mean, first I'm going to mark that if I don't get a foot back pretty quickly and easily. So when you're moving a back leg back, I created this little diagram, and I hope this is helpful. So if I want this leg back here, this would be the dog's right rear leg to go back, then I need the pressure to come from this side. So that would mean that I would probably need the dog, well, I wouldn't probably, I would have the dog's head angle slightly to his left. So I would tap the food, I would bring the food here, and then I would push the food towards him that way so that it would encourage this foot to go back. If I wanted this foot to go back, I would be doing the opposite. I would bring his nose this way and we would be going back diagonal. That means that whichever way you're stepping into the dog is going to be diagonally. So if I was standing facing this dog and I wanted this foot to go back or this leg to go back, I'm going to have food in my right hand, standing here, I'm facing the dog, and I'm gonna let the food bring his head slightly this way, step in with my right foot and just push that foot back. And the moment he lifts that toe, I'm clicking and feeding him. As soon as he can do it, I'm gonna add the cue. I'm gonna say back, and then prompt him, and then click, and then feed.
One of the most important things when teaching the free stack is teaching the dog how to back up. That means that rather than taking a bunch of steps backward, I just want the back foot that's too far forward to back up and to meet the other foot. You're going to play with how your body prompts and which foot it prompts later on, but for now you're just going to take a piece of food. I actually have a few pieces of food in my right hand. And I'm going to hold the food level with the dog's mouth and just move it towards her. And the moment that a back leg moves back, I click and treat. Notice that how I turn the head affects what leg is going back. If I want this leg to go back, her head needs to be turned slightly to the right to encourage that leg back. Same with the other leg. So if I want this leg to go back, I'm going to have to come in from this angle. As soon as I can prompt the dog to back up, I'm going to give the verbal cue right before I prompt the behavior. So it'll look like this. Back. All I wanted was that little foot popping back right there. Back. And it's okay that I'm clicking for the smallest amount of movement, because remember, I'm not going to want the dog to take a big step or multiple steps back. Back. I just want her to back up enough to get her rear feet in alignment with one another. Now look, I went a little low, so she thought I wanted it down. Back. I'm going to play a little bit with the head position. Give her a little break. Back. Keeping the foot lower. Back. Good. And a little bit more clicking and reinforcing for backing up.
Okay, so a variation of that is backing up onto something. So this obviously becomes, you know, an exercise in strength, sometimes in balance, and in other things. So it can be quite, you know, small and not too big of a deal. Like maybe this is pretty big though for this little crested toupee to be backing up onto that big peanut. This is a cattle dog that came to a class and he already had a lot of skills. So I was trying to create a challenge for him. So I took two of the legs off this climb, put him on this side to hold this disc on, and then just got him backing up onto that. Now this here, this chocolate lab, this dog was actually referred by a, I think by her surgeon or physical therapist, and they wanted the dog to learn to back up onto a wobble board and then be able to, you know, maneuver on the wobble board. It was for some sort of recovery, you know, work for rehab work for an injury that she had with the back leg, I think. So we taught her to back up on the wobble board, and I started out even with more stuff under it than this to keep it from wobbling so she could learn. And then eventually she could just back up without that. So that gets more challenging, but it can be, you know, it can be really helpful. And if he's just looking for a challenge for more fitness stuff, this can be really beneficial. So once you have the dog back up, you can have him back up onto something. Also, again, increasing body awareness, but also building strength and endurance in the rear. Okay, so another big piece of body awareness is weight distribution. And I don't think we think about this nearly enough. Like a dog can be stacked correctly, but have the weight distribution be off. So then the stack does not look good, meaning that it's not just the foot in the right place. It's also being forward up over your body. So we want to make sure that they know how to do that. They have practice shifting that way. So we need to make sure they know how to shift forward and back. So I have this picture of Ancy up on this peanut because we could do things like, you know, have her on the peanut, put food in her mouth, and then just gently push the food towards her like a half an inch, and she would weight shift back. Then a half an inch forward, and she would weight shift forward. I would also do this for fitness exercises, uh, side to side. So normally I'd have her on a harness here, but I was holding her so she doesn't. But I could have my hand on her back, either holding a harness or holding her body because she's so little, and just gently have her go this way and this way. So learning how to shift her weight. I mean, that's really, really confidence building too, because it's helping her not only learn how to distribute her weight, but also how to balance on something that's potentially, you know, wiggly. She's so little that it's hard to find things that are like, that make her really need to try to balance because she's so tiny that even on that peanut, she's so little on it that it's not as hard as it would be for like a big dog. Still super beneficial. So this is also helpful if you want dogs to learn how to lean forward. So that's a big issue I come across all the time. The dog is stacked, but then he's pushing back and his posting in the front, and it's just not pretty. So I'm going to show you a video on training that, teaching the lean.
No, this time don't prompt. Go click that. Nice. Good. Now stand up, take a step away, ask him to stay, and this time don't bring the food out to prompt. Just wait for him to offer it. Get ready, it's coming. Just wait for a weight shift forward. Not that way. Wait. It's okay, help him out. Just ask him to stand back up. Good. So go ahead and prompt it again. Good. Now this time prompt it with no food in your hand. Nice. Nice timing.
So that dog got so intense with the leaning that we actually had to like temper it a little because he would just lean so far that it started to be too intense. So we actually had to teach him to lean and then just hold it where we liked it. Another really good body awareness exercise or, you know, understanding is that it is a body awareness exercise when you're training isolated body parts. So I frequently help people when they have a specific issue. One piece of the body is not how they want it. And I showed a Frenchie because a lot of times it's ears. So it would be moving a specific foot. Now I will say if a dog always has something going on with one foot, I'm going to take a look at that before I start trying to train it and fix it. So I'll give you a couple of examples. A lot of times people will say every time after our down and back, he kicks out his left rear foot. And then I'll find that it's because of the way they're holding food out. And the dog is just turning ever so slightly and kicking out that left foot because the food is prompting him to do that. So you'll get that frequently. I remember having dogs where this happened, but this is a specific case that comes to mind where on the platform, every time she would stack her dog, she would put his back foot where it needed to be and he would bring it forward and she would put it back and he would bring it forward. And I'm like, something's going on with that leg. Is there anything that's happened with that foot? And I found out that he had an injury or muscle injury or something to that foot. So either he's still having pain or he's just gotten in the habit of accommodating that pain. So we need to make sure that the dog's okay and not in pain. And we may have to modify that or do something if there's something that's uncomfortable that's causing him always to move that body part. But if it's just because he has poor proprioception and body awareness, we can certainly fix that with training. Raise your ears, lift your tail, lower your muzzle. Those are all behaviors that are um, proprioception and body awareness exercises. It is, can you move this body part how I'm asking you to move it? And can I train you to do that? So this is something that I always use a clicker for, because sometimes the body parts that are so tiny that you have to be so clear to the dog. You have to mark it exactly when it happens. So, for example, and I don't even know which video I have to show you, but I'm going to show you some video of this. I think it's a tail lift. I've had dogs where if we're wanting to train lifting their tail, where the first thing that I'm having to click, because it's a micro shaping thing, meaning it's the smallest piece of behavior, is just a little muscle twitch above their tail on the back. I mean, because that's what the first thing that happens. So when I want to train the dog to do that behavior, I need to start at the closest thing I have. It's not shaping if I, make a noise to make the dog's tail come up. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that you're using a prompt that we want to make sure the dog truly understands what's happening. Like he's thinking about lifting his tail. He's not just lifting his tail because you said, "Oh, aren't you a good boy?" Now that's not bad. It's not bad if you say, "Where's your tail?" And he's just learned to get excited away. That's not bad. And if you give him a cookie, he might actually start to put it together. But this is just saying, I want to really be very, very clear to the dog. It's that specific thing. And can you do that when I cue it? Building a training plan can be really helpful for this. So here's a video of a dog that I had trained to lift his tail. And I think at this point I was putting it on cue, meaning I was starting to say, tail.
Tail. Where's it? There. Tail. Hey. Where's your tail? Where is it? Good tail. Good. Tail. Where's your tail?
Now I do have to say about the tail work that it's important that you know that emotional state will trump training, meaning that if the dog's tail lowers because he's scared, for instance, and you train him to lift his tail up in a situation where he's very calm and comfortable and relaxed, like at home, that doesn't mean he's actually going to be able to do that behavior in the ring. If he gets to the dog show and he's terrified, and when he's terrified, his tail drops, you cannot just ignore that he's terrified and go in there and tell him to lift his tail. It won't work, because it's not, there's emotional stuff happening. That tail drop is fueled by the emotional state, not actually just the training and you asking him to lift it. I hope that makes sense. So shaping is when we split the behavior into small pieces. Again, I usually use a clicker for shaping. I don't use a clicker all the time. I use a marker a lot where I'm saying good, but I really want to be super, super clear when I'm shaping something, especially something super specific like a tail lift or an ear or a foot. So you're going to reinforce or click for and pay for small pieces of the behavior, approximations towards the finished behavior. So if the dog's having issues getting it, you're going to make the pieces even smaller. A training plan can be really helpful for this, and you can accomplish almost any training goal by shaping the behavior, meaning the most beautiful and quality training is usually used with a clicker. The really amazing husbandry, cooperative care behavior that you see from zoo animals, they use a marker. Most of them use a clicker, some use a whistle. But when they're doing things like training a gorilla to put his arm outside of his enclosure to get a blood draw, that's all shaped, that's trained this way. So you really can accomplish a lot like this. And people think it looks long and crazy, but it's not. It's just you're really looking at each step. So this is just a quick little training plan. Isolating a body part movement like one foot is micro shaping. Again, tiny little pieces of behavior. Head tilt, ears, tail, and the background is just what the dog already knows in terms of that specific behavior, if there's anything he already knows. So what do you want to shape? This is just a quick little training plan. If you were wanting to train the dog how to move with you in the show ring, the first step I ask for is, can you just come with me? So he doesn't have to do anything except for be willing to walk off and work with me. So I would start out by clicking for that. The moment that he gets that, and I've clicked a few times for moving with me, I'm going to go to the next step because he's mastered moving off with me. So now I'm going to say, can you trot while you do that? And so the next step is going to be trotting. So not walking, not pulling, not jumping, not leaping, coming with me and trotting. Those are now the two criteria. Then once he can trot with me, I'm going to be like, okay, now I need you to do it at the correct speed. So now we're going to play with speeds. Once that's in, now I'm going to work on position. I might want him to get a little bit more out in front. Then head carriage, then duration, meaning I need you to do this all the way around the ring 2 times, build it up to that. Put it on cue to where I can say, let's go. And the dog knows how to do it. And then you just build it from there. And then as soon as you get it, and it's on cue, I'm taking it to different places. I'm adding it with other behaviors like a free stack at the end. And that's just a simple little training plan. But sometimes it helps to write it out so that you can know what steps you plan to take, because sometimes the dog's going to get it and you need to be ready for the next step. Because if he's training, you're just like, oh, I don't know what, put the clicker of food down and take a break and figure out what you want the dog to do, or you're both just going to be fumbling around. Okay, so this is one of my favorite tools. It's a huge body awareness tool that is helpful for so many things, and that's cavalettis. So cavalettis are small obstacles. I used to say jumps, but they're really not jumps. They're really more like obstacles, because you don't want the dog leaping, and I don't want to usually change the dog's height of how he's moving. I usually want to change how he's moving, or maybe help him to increase his reach and extension. So it's great for increasing foot placement awareness while moving, and really helpful for correcting or improving many gaiting issues like pacing or pulling or chasing other dogs, running up on the dog in front of it or cutting corners. It can be really helpful for dogs who get distracted with other dogs, because if you're forcing them now to have to think about their foot placement, then they're going to be less focused on the dog in front of them. So dogs who run up on other dogs, I will frequently do cavaletti work and have another dog run through ahead of that dog, and then that dog. And then we just start rewarding that behavior once we get it and building a new pattern for the dog. And it can also help improve the dog's reach and extension. So I got a little video here on how we do cavaletti work. This was at a workshop. This is a little dog who I'd never worked with before this day, and she had never done cavalettis. And she's doing great after this lesson. Good.
Oh, because it gets her to bounce a bit more, you mean?
It picks up their feet.
And it may,
So they have to, and they have awareness of their feet and their rear end.
Good.
Very nice.
But
All right. Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about ladder work. So ladder work is basically just another body awareness exercise for foot placement. So it's excellent for general foot placement awareness. This was the exercise I was saying Bright, that Great Dane, came in and he aced this. And I was like, you've already done a lot of body awareness stuff. I can tell, because there's no reason why he should be able to be so good at this at that age. But they had taught him to recognize his foot. And this can be really helpful for just life in general, just for a dog to have better sort of balance and awareness and the ability to maneuver through things and navigate through things. It can be done with any age puppy. So again, my little baby puppies that had all of that stuff in their pen, this is a version of that. That was a baby puppy version of this, you know, moving over and around stuff. And it's really helpful for building confidence. And you can add obstacles or change things as the dog gets skilled. So when we first started out with this, so if you look at this picture here, so this would be a row of equipment, and then we would work the dog all the way through that. They were going, I think, underneath these things, and then this is just the ladder with nothing in it, right? So we would start out with it like that, but then I would start adding things. And this one doesn't have a lot yet, but hula hoops, I would put, jump poles all over. We would have all this stuff. So the dog was picking up his feet and maneuvering around and walking through it. Really, really good exercise. But literally, you could take a ladder in your backyard and lay it down and do the same thing, just having the dog walk through it. The dogs are never trotting through this. This is not Cavalettis. This is stepping through and being aware with your feet. All righty then. Any questions? Let's talk about questions, if anybody has any. Oh, I got some questions over here. Maybe just one. Can you discuss how to set the distance to improve reach and dive? I heard height of elbow. Ooh, good question. Well, I will tell you that we have a Cavaletti class where we go through everything of how to train it, how to do it, how to use it for different things. But for me personally, I use what I consider to be Kay Lawrence's method, which she's a phenomenal trainer from the UK. So for me, the distance that I use, if this is my dog, is from the front toe to the back toe when the dog is stacked. Now, some people will say the withers. So it's interesting. Somebody said, I heard the height of the elbow. So that would be here, right? So that's half of the withers. So when people say the withers, having dachshunds, it's very hard for me to imagine that with as short as they are and as long as they are, it just doesn't make sense to me. And the way I learned it was front toe to back toe stacked. So that's how I do it. And it works perfectly with every dog I've done them with. So if I'm doing it to improve reach and extension, then what I'm going to do is start out the dog here with it here, front toe to back toe. And then as the dog gets skilled at it and is now trotting really well through them, I'm going to increase the space of the Cavalettis from each other to where eventually, ideally, the space is their reach and drive, right? So that's how much I would start to open them up. So I would start out with the Cavalettis set at front toe to back toe. And then as the dog gets better, increase it a little bit. Now you're not going to just increase it indefinitely. You don't want to go further than where they're reaching and driving, because we just want them to push a little bit further. All of these for puppies. Yeah, all of this stuff. The only thing I don't do with puppies, honestly, Mary, is going to be strength stuff. Now, like my puppy Rook, I have a Dachshund puppy. He's 8 months now, I think. He does the fitness stuff. He does tons of stacking box. You know, he can get on there by himself. He can get on all the equipment by himself. I haven't done a ton of high up stuff because I just haven't needed to. The thing is, you don't want to do strength stuff with babies. So I'm not going to have babies sitting pretty. I'm not going to have babies, you know, up on peanuts doing all kinds of, you know, big things. Ansi, that little toy fox terrier on that big peanut, is different, even though she was still an older puppy in that picture. But that is because the peanut's such a big space, doesn't require a lot of strength. But I just want to be careful about doing too much strength stuff while they're growing and while they're little. But the paws up stuff, the backing up, the stepping around with their feet, the nose targeting, the, you know, different surfaces, the body awareness of even just throwing a whole bunch of things on the backyard, you know, like brooms and mop handles and things, and the dog walking through it, all that's okay for puppies. Did I answer your question okay about the Cavalettis? And goody. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Again, I'm thrilled with how many people are interested in this topic. And I might be down for doing this as a workshop where people can actually come and work their dogs if there's interest in that. Honestly, wasn't sure it would be this popular. I'm super excited. I am in Northern California, but I do Zoom workshops where actually it's just like this, but the people with working spots are, you know, their cameras on so that when we're working dogs, I can actually coach them. So it would be not an in-person workshop, but a Zoom workshop. Goody. I know it seems weird about doing dog workshops with Zoom, but it works really, really good because I can see what you're doing and coach you. You know, I can't take your dog and demonstrate with your dog, which is kind of a cool thing to do, but I can still coach a lot. Okay, cool. I'm excited. I'll get a Zoom workshop scheduled for this. I make my own Cavalettis because this is such a good question. I like my Cavalettis not to be off the ground, right? So what I use is a 1-inch piece of PVC with elbows on the ends. And the elbows, if the dog is not teeny tiny, super short, then I'll actually put the elbows, you know, the elbows will be like a little stand. So it keeps the, you know, the Cavaletti up. If it's a tiny dog, then the elbows it can be set on its side and the elbows just keep it from rolling. So that's what I like for Cavalettis. I have some fancy sets of Cavalettis that probably cost $60 or $80 or something, but they're higher than I really like unless I was working with a really large dog. And I don't have a really large dog, and it just is more to even travel around with. I literally just like to use a you know, the PVC pipes. But I'll tell you, I should have put this picture in here because I love the picture. But I went to one workshop and I worked with a Chihuahua that was really, you know, a tiny little dog. And the Cavalettis were too big, and they just had some, you know, at the place I was teaching had some leashes hanging on the wall. And I'm like, can I just use those leashes? And I just zigzagged the leashes like this to create Cavalettis for this tiny little Chihuahua. So he was Cavaletting, you know, moving over, you know, a 3/4 inch leather leash. Really, what number of Cavalettis? I like to start out with 5 or 6. And usually that's what I use. But some dogs, actually, we need to do more Cavalettis because they just start getting into their trot into, you know, halfway through. And then by the time, if they've only got 5 or 6, then, you know, they're already out of it when they're just starting to hit their groove. So I would say, you know, ideally you can end up with 10 or 12. And that number allows you to sort of, you know, do things at an angle, do turns and stuff like that. The peanut, the wobble board, all that stuff. those pieces that you saw are made by FitPaws USA. Hold on, let me grab a link for you on that. I'm just grabbing their website real quick and I'll throw it into the chat. So this is one of the companies that has really good pieces of equipment. That's where the peanuts come from. That's where that wobble board came from. And then there's another company now that makes equipment also. And I actually kind of like a lot of this stuff better. I feel like it's a little bit more well made. So I'm going to throw this one in for you too. So FitPaws is where anything that's not purple comes from FitPaws probably, because FitPaws has different colors, but TotoFit stuff is all purple. So those are links for those. Let's see. Suggested places to buy. Okay, I answered that one. Sorry, I forgot to get a moderator to moderate for me, so I'm having to do all this by myself. So same height even for a large breed puppy. Yeah, I just really want it low because I don't want to encourage them to lift. But I will tell you, if you have, depending on the breed, like my friend had a Mastiff, a Neapolitan Mastiff, a good friend of mine. And we were training him because he paced, which actually is allowed in that breed, but they still get dinged for it. And he was so big and he shuffled his feet so much that he would just kick Cavalettis made out of, PVC around. So with him, we'd have to put, if you have a big puppy that shuffles his feet or doesn't lift, you might have to put something down to actually hold them down. But you could easily, put the poles inside. I just had a great idea. You could put cinder blocks on their sides, so that the holes are facing the pole, and put the pole into a cinder block that's low. That would help it from rolling around. Where do you get, hold on. Okay, where do you get the peanut? What number of Cavalettis? I answered that one. How long do you work them at a time? If you have 12 poles, I run them through 2 times. Or I usually would say I might do Cavaletti work for 10 minutes, and it's really important that the dog, you end things with the dog wanting more, right? Like you don't want the dog to be like, oh, do we have to do Cavalettis again? I want the dog just having a good time. And for those of you that are really interested in Cavalettis, I think I have a Cavaletti webinar. I could definitely offer the Cavaletti webinar again. And we also have it as an online course. So you could learn a lot more from that too. So basically I would probably, I'd make it in a way that's fun. So the dogs really want to do it. And I've had dogs that, were worried about people, didn't really want to work with me. But when I did Cavaletti work, they really liked doing that. So it really tells me that it's a fun thing for the dogs to do. And the way I do it, they just run through, and I'm lazy, so I'm not always wanting to run back and forth with my dogs. I'll just send them through. I'm standing on the side of the Cavalettis, like here's the poles here. I'm standing here. I send the dog through. I click and throw the food over there. He turns and heads back the other way. I click and throw the food over there. So I would probably do it more than 2 times. But if it's a very large breed or like a big load of a dog who's just like, oh, it's a lot of work, then yeah, maybe only 2 times. And you may need to build up to 12 poles. So if they can trot beautifully through, 5 poles, they got that, then you can add more. But if they're still stumbling and trying to navigate through a couple poles, then you may need to have not build up the amount of poles yet, if that makes sense. Absolutely on the equipment links. Any other questions or comments? I'm very open to adding learning opportunities for, if there's a need for it. So if people are like, I want to do a body awareness class or workshop, I'm happy to do that. I mean, it's my favorite thing to help people with their show dogs. And this is a really, really cool topic for me. Any other questions or comments? So again, this is recorded. I will download it. It'll download and then I'll upload it to Facebook or to YouTube, sorry. And then I'll send everybody a link for the YouTube recording, which will be up for 60 days for you to rewatch. But feel free to let me know if you have any questions or comments, or if you have an interest in me adding one of those as a workshop or a webinar for, you know, any other topics that you're interested in. All right, I guess we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so very much for coming. Those of you who, well, I think almost everybody registered for this through Facebook. So that link on the Facebook is where I will post the under the event in Facebook, I will post the link for the YouTube once it's all uploaded. I'm so glad. I hope this was helpful. It was really fun to create, but like I said, this is a topic that's just, there's so many moving parts, you know, there's so many pieces, and I really, really am excited that people were interested and liked it. So thanks for coming, guys. And like us on Facebook. If you're looking for more stuff like this and more ongoing, you might want to think about our mentor program. It can be purchased yearly. For, I think it's $389, but it's also available monthly now for $39.95. And basically we're doing stuff like this all the time, just in there with members of the program. So yesterday we did a webinar on show-stopping stacks, and then I'm re-recording a lot of webinars in with the group, so they're just getting all that. But they get a, you know, we do a couple of Zooms a week, and they're all about, sometimes we do classes. We're getting ready to do a talk on kennel names and registered names. We do talks on breeding and stud dogs and contracts and just training stuff, everything. Okay, it's so exciting to see people from all over the world. Oh my gosh, I love this. And I'm sorry that Tony had a hard time logging in through Facebook. I'm gonna, feel free to let me know what the problem was, so I can try and see if there's something I can do to make it better for you guys. The thing is, when it's when you register through Facebook, I don't actually have your email address. So everything I have to put in there to get you guys in here. But this is great. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and be on the lookout for that recording to be posted. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.